tax and revenue issues, good workplace issues, right? All these are connected, right? If you pull one out, it takes away from our ability to get to this frame, this goal of a different sort of economy, a more just, a sustainable economy. One that values the environment, that values our communities, that values our ability to have, right, vibrant economic lives as well. So, as we go through it, not easy to do, to show up, but therein lies the ability, when you have so many different great leaders across the country, our ability is to say, in this model of organization that we're building, let's rise up the individual business leader. Let's rise up these great Main Street business groups like the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Local First Arizona, the Green Chamber of Commerce of New Mexico, right? Whatever their form, those are the voices that need to be heard, and their Main Street businesses, the trade associations, right? We just got joined by the Freelancers Union, by the Sustainable Furnishing Council, by the Specialty Sleep Association. Used to be the Waterbed Association. Who knew? It was a trade association for waterbeds. There you go. We get them all. So what we try to do is recognizing that this is not a full-time profession for business leaders to be able to engage with policy. And if we say it's imperative to do, our job is to then say, through the American Sustainable Business Council, to make it easy. So we'll create the business case materials. We'll create the business talking points. We'll have created that through a collaborative process of all our business leaders. And we won't be afraid to be able to have the hard conversations, right, around minimum wage. We're having tough conversations around fracking, around taxes, going to revenue positive versus just making ends meet, right? These are hard. We're willing to do that, and we're not willing to allow a large company to come in and subsidize what we're doing so we'll be financially stable, so they get to decide that we're not going to work on this issue. Oh, happy to work on climate change, but don't touch chemicals. Oh, don't touch my taxes. I'm going to hide them overseas, but I'm happy. No, we have to look at all of these as connected, and we have to protect the decision-making process and support it. So we help, whether it's sign-on letters, helping to create access to the media. So when we get a call from the Washington Post, it's not me that has to say, I go to the business. You tell them your story. Tell them the story and why you need to stand, why we need to see renewable energy move forward. And it doesn't just have to be the solar or the wind company saying it. It's your Main Street business that might say, this is the way I need to move forward. And now those voices, when we show up with these business leaders, they go, oh my gosh, we've never heard from you before, right? This is different, because all we ever heard from was those other businesses, right? The oil and gas companies, Goldman Sachs, go down the list. Those are the people with the, so what we've tried to do is create a framework and a process and a support system to allow your voices to be heard in Washington, but also to aggregate that at the state level. So what we've been working to do is we funnel money back into the field, so if we have a campaign and we need Louisiana to organize, we hire the member group that's in Louisiana to do that organizing, right? So we're trying to keep true to the values that we hold, that this is about building an independent business movement that is working collaboratively with each other, right? So if tomorrow you cut off the head, right, the American Sustainable Business Council gets ripped apart because of some incredible whatever, overnight all these business groups could reform themselves and remain. So we need a permanent business infrastructure to be this business voice and presence and power in this country. So we heard a lot about, and so how does this play out, right? So you see, this was a slide of some of the economic development programs in 15 states, sorted by the number of funds going to local businesses. And you see how few funds, but these are policy decisions. These are decisions that get made at the state level to decide whether or not to bring in a big box store that's going to create the jobs, right? Or to create the Main Street businesses and support local economies, right? So you heard Judy talk about that. But states are making decisions to undermine our ability to support those Main Street businesses. Important to have your voice heard to say what? We know that, right, by supporting Main Street businesses, you actually get more jobs than the big box stores, right? Because small and medium-sized businesses create, the numbers have been up to 70% of the jobs in this country. Why? Because we see, when they do the calculations, that normally 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of money stays in the community when you, right, buy locally, right? All those are important, but it's not enough to just buy local, because they're making decisions where they're putting investments into trying to lure the next big corporation to come and settle in. That'll move its money not only out of the state, but often out of the country. And no tax base and the like as well. You know, then you have other creative programs. Folks were talking about cooperatives and worker cooperatives, right? You know, so based on the Mondragon model in the Basque region of Spain, right? We've been seeing creation. And so in Cleveland, right, Hard Hit Cleveland has been this evergreen project that's created 4 businesses that are interlocking worker cooperatives that together are now using the idea of connecting to anchor institutions like universities, right, and hospitals and the like to do purchasing. So they're purchasing local, they're purchasing sustainable, they're using those frames in order to then stabilize, not only create jobs for those that have been unemployed or underemployed, but to be able to stabilize hard-hit neighborhoods in Cleveland. There's a project going on in the South Bronx. There's a project that's going on with actually unions, right? The steel workers are trying to create a union-led worker cooperative movement, right? So there's incredible opportunities that are here. Then you see Cleveland saying, okay, let's do some preferential procurement from companies, right, that are providing greater benefit. Why? Because when we look at the economic system, we understand that companies are getting away with murder, literally and then economically, because they're not accounting for the externalities. What are the costs? When a big box store, right, like Walmart in California doesn't provide health care, they use the state system to provide it. So the taxpayers in California are paying for this. Why? You know, because so we see that when you provide greater benefit, you should be rewarded because you're saving the state, the locality funds, right? You're creating greater wealth. At the same time, you're creating jobs. We need to start accounting for this. We need to move beyond the GDP and other systems of measure to get to the real accounting, to full cost accounting and the like. So that's part of the work that has to happen at the state level, and at the national level, and at the local level. That requires policies to be able to move it forward. But then, every time we think we're getting it right, all these buy local movements and new policies to, you know, to provide for greater procurement around this, you followed NAFTA and GATT and all the trade agreements from years ago. There's a new one that we just found out that no one is talking about. It's this Trans-Pacific Partnership. So it's a trade agreement with a lot of the Pacific Rim countries that they're going to try and slip through. So this is just coming down now. And what will happen is, so you create a policy like that in Cleveland, or Philadelphia created a program like that, it's going to basically outlaw the ability of localities to be able to purchase locally because it will be unfair in trade agreements. You provide social and environmental benefit, unfair to be able to do that. I mean, you know, so examples in Canada, people were producing renewable energy, they're going to be able to take them, right? You produce local energy here, they're going to be able to take you into the international courts and say, illegal, unfair, you know, it's messing with our trade agreement here. So we've got to now mobilize nationally to stand up, and you know how quickly they move trade agreements here. And for what? For this greater good, supposedly for business. This will not be good for any of our businesses as well. So here's then, you know, in the midst of all this, you know, up against the big behemoths and the money that we're up against, you know, are we able to create change? And the answer is yes. You know, even as a young organization and the like, You know, here's a bill that passed last year, you know, as a part of the American Jobs Act. You know, some of the leaders in our movement here created this crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding platform, right? So you know about Kickstarter and some of the other crowdfunding. This is a way to actually invest in companies. So we talked about how to get access to capital for our companies. Here's a piece of legislation, that we helped write, that we helped save, because there was another version in the House of Representatives that said, we don't want any rules. Let's just let Wall Street take care of it for us. They know how to operate systems like this. And we said, no, we need good rules, good regulations that will help guide this so we can actually have money flowing, built on community trust from local investors, right, at the $100 level, right? So what this is in essence doing is creating a lower threshold. So, right, there's high levels that you have to meet in order to with the Securities and Exchange Commission in order to invest in a company, right? This is creating a lower threshold. So we had asked for even lower thresholds, but the cap will be $1 million raise, and the caps will be, you know, if you know you have wealth of under 100,000, you know, you can give up to 5%. If it's greater, you can give up to 10%. But that means your neighbors down the street could begin to invest in your business. And why would they want it? They move their money from Wall Street, they put them in a business, that's their neighbor that they want to see there, that they're buying their food from, that they invest, they'll get their neighbors to win, win, win. But we've also been engaging with the SEC, because what we asked for was a two-tiered system that would allow us to perhaps cap this at $250, you know, to make a $250 donation and cap it at $100,000, so we can take with even lower restrictions, right? So you're doing a $100,000 raise, you shouldn't have to meet the cap of the $1 million. So it'll make it even easier for the types of businesses that we're talking about supporting, and even easier for those investors. So there was a victory in the legislation, and now we push. And then as a part of that, we're now creating, through the American Sustainable Business Council, a meta platform, a crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding platform, so all the local groups across this country can be in one marketplace where they're raising funds and we're bringing attention, awareness, and dollars back to their local community. So SBN in Massachusetts could be a member, you know, and any other groups could, as a member of ASPC in related forms, they can participate in this crowdfunding that we're helping to develop, put all the groundwork in, so we can create greater wealth across the country. So the other piece that you hear a lot about is, you know, regulation. So we've done some polling to prove it. And often when you do polls of small business leaders, just know you'll see some other polling numbers, is that normally about 50% of them are Republican or Republican leaning. It just turns out that way when you do national samples. You know, so about 35% or so, you know, are Democrats, and the rest independents, and it sort of varies and hovers around that range. So look at those numbers. That's not what you hear coming out of Washington, D.C. Oh, no, that small business actually believes that good regulations are good for business. Level the playing field, make it fair. We need rules. There's no sport that we play, right, and no professional sport that doesn't have rules, right? But you don't see that stopping anyone from scoring more hockey goals, from scoring more points. They excel. You excel within the rules of the game. So to us here, you know, and who's that coming from? From the people that are breaking the rules all the time. Let's get rid of all rules and regulations. So part of our job is to stand up when they're attacking EPA, when they're attacking the Department of Labor, when all the folks that helped to create the rules, to say, actually, the rules are fine, but that's even the minimum. Our businesses are moving beyond that, and that's good for business. We have to change the story. We have to change the narrative. So this is no longer about creating good rules versus that being bad for business, right? These are good for business in the frame. So what happens along these frames? So the styrene industry buys itself a hearing at the House of Representatives, right? Buys itself a hearing because it's a report on carcinogens. The report on carcinogens, which has gathered all the scientific data, that's peer-reviewed data from across the country that links styrene to cancer. So what does the styrene industry say? It says, you have to get rid of that report because it's bad for business. What do we say? We bring a business leader in from a company called BioAmp that produces non-toxic, renewable chemicals that does everything that styrene does, and what she turns to him and says is, excuse me, but you're in the wrong business. We don't need you anymore. Get a new business model, create new products, create the green chemistry that you need to move on, because we're creating those businesses. Now's the time to do something different. If it's proven to be the case, consumers don't want toxic. Who's going to walk into the store and say, can I have the most toxic product we have? No, but we can't even get transparency on products. We don't know about GMOs in products. We don't know about the carcinogens in products. We don't, because they don't even want that transparency, let alone to have it regulated. So you know, this afternoon you'll hear a little bit about this. It's another session about benefit corporation, but there's new corporate forms, right? You have everything from social enterprises, right, to LLCs, to new forms of corporations that are setting. So the benefit corporation is, we've had the past, right, working with our partner B-Lab. These are new corporate forms that really allow for being beholden to your shareholders, but to say that you're going to meet the needs, the social and environmental needs as well. And that's built into your corporate papers, yes? So you're immediately, and it's third-party reviewed. You know, you need to be accountable to your stakeholders as well. There's transparency around this. So there's a whole set of mechanisms now that are being brought forth, and this is now passed in 14 states, including Massachusetts, right? So now, instead of just getting lost behind the maze of all the other corporate, so you still pay taxes, you still do everything else, right, as a regular for-profit corporation, but it's saying we're committed to this, and therefore our shareholders can hold us accountable to meeting our social and environmental benefit needs as well. So this is important because it required legislation, right? It is state by state by state legislation that we're helping to move, right? The other piece that's really important around this is we said fair competition in the capital system. Okay, great. Well, why is it that Amazon doesn't pay taxes on a lot of their profits and therefore able to lower their profits? Why? So all the Main Street, like a Main Street bookstore, right, is paying taxes because they're physically located in a place. Amazon said, we're not in that place, even if they have a big warehouse there and the like, so they get away because of internet sales. So it just passed the U.S. Senate, right? Just passed. So, and you can see, even, dare I say it, some bipartisan support for this. But this is our community. We passed this. We worked on this. We moved this forward. We won in Washington. It is possible for us to do. That's why this is real. But so now it's on to the House, right? So we need more folks to stand up and to say, let's move this. It's fair. It's only about being fair here, is what we're saying. So the other piece, you know, you can see we talk about taxes and revenue. Why don't we have the money to invest in our Main Street businesses and sustainable businesses and renewable energy and the like? Yeah, look, Massachusetts, right? $1.688 billion in lost revenue because it's hidden overseas by individuals and corporations in tax havens.
Is this annually?
Yes.
Annually.
Say that again. So, you know, so what's clear is that then we have to step up and engage on taxes. So, you know, groups like Business for Shared Prosperity, Responsible Wealth that are here and doing a session after this, right, trying to engage tax policy. So from tax havens, so there's a bill on tax havens before us, ending corporate subsidies. Why are the oil companies still getting subsidies? More profits than ever before in the history of humankind to any industry. That was set up to spur new industries. Nothing new about the oil industry. Why are they still getting subsidies? Why are commodity crops still getting subsidies in this country? Why isn't sustainable and they're pulling. So we have to engage with the Farm Bill to make sure that sustainable agriculture gets honored, right? That the ability to access, you know, food for low-income communities is honored as a part of this. Why are we still giving subsidies to corporate farmers as a part of it? So but being able to get to a revenue positive frame, so led by Business for Shared Prosperity, there was a victory where they were going to say, let's bring our money back over here, but we don't really have to pay much taxes on that. Stop. Stop. With a broad coalition, with us as the business voice. Stop. From them being able to get away with hiding it overseas and bringing it back and paying less taxes than you. We still need to drive the tax havens bills. We need to look at corporate tax. We need to make this a fair tax system so we can raise the funds to rebuild our infrastructure, rebuild our communities and our economy. So, Safer Chemicals, Healthy Products, we're working on the Safe Chemicals Act. The bill, right, around the time of the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act was the Safe Chemical Act. 1976, hasn't been transformed since. 5 chemicals have been dealt with. There's over 80,000 chemicals in the marketplace and growing all the time. We couldn't even get asbestos controlled under the Act. It's time to reform the Safe Chemicals Act. Safe cosmetics are not reformed, and so on and so forth. State chemical policy. But this is not just saying no to the bad, this is about saying yes to the good. So climate and energy, we're just closing up. So climate and energy, clearly, so Keystone, fracking, right? Regulating greenhouse gas emissions, but coming in with the positive frames from renewable portfolio standard. But as we stand here, the American Legislative Exchange Council, right, which is a conservative set of players that have influence in the state, are looking to undo all of the renewable portfolio standards that help drive us towards renewables in all the states across the country. They are not giving up on the fact, oh, let's let all energy systems move forward together. Not the case. And the last piece of this, of course, is the idea of campaign finance and Citizens United. If we're not engaging around issues like that, then we don't have the ability to be able to influence any of these issues because of the influence of money in politics. We need to transform that in Massachusetts. We need to transform that in the country. So here are some ideas, about the ways to engage, help build SPN, help build the other, speak out. We will help you to do that. If you want to join the council, that's great. Help build this group with Lori and help build the other groups that are out here and represented in this room so we can rise up together to become not the alternative, but the business voice and presence and power to create the economy that's a more just and sustainable economy. So thank you.
Questions?
I don't think David's going to like my question. Maybe will. What do you think about a carbon tax?
We were not particularly happy with the cap and trade program. Most of the members were not, because it felt it was giving it away to Wall Street, the people that helped to create some of the problems would now help to create the solution. Einstein called that insanity, right? And so, the carbon tax is being looked at. You see it in some of the regional, the RGGI program here in the Northeast that has a bit of a carbon tax to it. So this is being explored, and it's a part of the portfolio of what we need to look at here. But is what we can build broader consensus on. But we have to act now. It's not enough for the president to say we need to engage climate change and then move forward on fracking and Keystone and other things like that. We need to start putting in measures now.
Liz?
I just have a question about how you address differing interests based on organizations and their locations. I imagine they have different interests. How do you moderate those voices?
So first of all, local wisdom is always to be respected, and so part of what we're also doing is, like for instance in New York, we built a sustainable business. We took 6 Business Alliance for Local Economy network groups, and we brought them together to form this new council. We're building a new council of the food, the energy, all these disparate groups in Kentucky, coal country. We're doing this in North Carolina, where they outlaw the word sustainability, you know. Right, literally, you know, that's right. There's, you know, in South Carolina, you're not allowed to talk about climate change on the coast. We have so the point is, you know, when it comes to that, we're allowing the state-based groups, as they should, to make, whether they're groups like this that already exist, or the new ones that we're building, you decide on the issues for your state, you navigate. When it comes to the national, we sit in a consensus process to really figure this out. And then if it applies differently, because it's state-based decision-making, then we let folks to move that in their state.
Great. I just want to make a couple of comments before we move into our, we got another chance to engage with David. He's doing a workshop, and what's the title of that workshop? Do you remember?
This was, you know, is businesses making change.
Right.
It's something like
So you have a chance to go deeper with him after this. But I just want to I want to thank David for the work he's done with the American Sustainable Business Council, because he's been a real leader in making this happen. Big hand for that.